After Grace left, Jason looked around the small rental apartment and felt empty inside. He picked up the scarf she had placed on the table and wrapped it around his neck. The corner of his lips curled into a slight smile. When Jason walked out of the rental apartment, Terence had already been waiting outside for a long time. When he saw his boss, he was stunned. The president had never liked wearing a plain scarf, but then, he was wearing one. And when Jason walked closer to him, Terence studied the threads on the scarf and the knitting method. He was almost sure that it was a handmade scarf. There seemed to be only one answer to Mr. Reed's hand-woven scarf. This scarf was probably knitted by Grace. Mr. Reed, we're going to. Let's go to the hospital. Today, I probably should have dinner with the old master, Jason ordered. Okay, Terence responded. He started the car and headed for the hospital. The bus stopped at a place not far from the southern entrance of the town where Grace got off. It had already been ads by Pub Future 3 years, and this town seemed to have changed a lot. Some of the muddy roads had been rebuilt with cement. On the way, she met some of the neighbors who used to live close to her grandmother's house. They all pointed at her and whispered to each other. Grace was already used to this. Ever since she was released from prison, those who knew her in the past could not help but talk about her when they saw her. When she arrived at her grandmother's house, she found it to be crowded with her relatives. Seeing her, her second uncle forced a smile and said, "Grace, come on in and have a seat. We've been waiting for you for a long time." Grace was a little surprised. After all, after what had happened to her, her second uncle had even sent someone to tell her to not implicate them at the courthouse. Come, sit down." Her third aunt walked over with a warm expression and pulled Grace down to the chair. Then, her uncle-in-law, aunt-in-law, second uncle-in-law, and third uncle. All these relatives surrounded her and asked her about her well-being. Grace had a flash of doubt in her eyes. "Where's Grandma?" she asked. Smiling face. "Casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Grandma is taking a nap right now. You can go see her when she wakes up," her third aunt said. Her uncle then said, "Grace, now that you are out of prison, you have to be a decent person. You're not with anyone now, right? Women should always find a man to rely on. I will introduce you to a good partner later." "Uncle, I don't want to find anyone to get together with right now." Grace refused. Sigh. "Child, what's wrong with you?" Her uncle seemed to want to say something else, but her third aunt winked at him, and he didn't say anything more. At this moment, Grace's grandmother, Susie, was in an intense argument with her husband. "I disagree. I absolutely don't agree to marry her off to that fool. She's going to ruin her whole life," Susie shouted. Mr. Kelly snorted and said, "She has already been ruined for a lifetime. What do you think Grace can do now that she is out of prison? I have asked around about it. She's a street cleaner now. It's better for her to get married while she is still young." The Miller family said that as long as Grace gives birth to a baby for the Miller family, they will support her for a lifetime. "I am doing this for her sake." "What do you mean you are doing it for her sake? You are simply greedy for the Miller family's money," Susie said with hatred. "You are selling Grace off." "Mom, what do you mean we are selling her off?" The third aunt came over and said, "Dad is doing this for our whole family. My nephews are going to get married soon. Now, with the $300,000 of the Miller family, they can at least get a down payment if they buy a house in the town. Mom, you can't let your grandson fail to get a wife." Author's note: thank you for all your love on Grace and Jason, and I had read all your comments. I know I made some mistakes throughout it. I am so sorry about the names, and they are going back now. Just comment and ask. The third aunt tried her best to persuade Susie. After all, her father and two elder brothers had promised her that they would give her $300,000 when the time came. $300,000 was equivalent to her yearly salary. However, no matter what her daughter or her husband said, Susie refused to cooperate. In the end, the third aunt simply said, "Mom, big brother and second brother said that if you mess this up and our nephews can't afford a house and a wife, they will blame you for the rest of their lives." Susie felt angry and anxious when she heard that. Do you still have any conscience? Have you forgotten how Grace used to take care of us? The third aunt smiled and said, "Mom, the past is the past. And the present is the present. You can't ruin our family and the future of our younger generation just because of her. Besides, my nephew and second nephew not being able to marry also has something to do with her. Why would any daughter of a decent family still want to marry them if they heard that one of our family members was in prison? Not to mention if we don't even have a house prepared for the brides-to-be." After a while, Susie gritted her teeth and looked at her third daughter with tears in her eyes. How can you be worthy of your sister? Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. The third aunt didn't take it seriously. Her fourth sister had been dead for so many years. Even if she was indeed close with her before, how could that compare to the money she could get now? Grace was still surrounded by her cousins out in the front. Her cousin, Stella, was chewing on some crackers as she said with a faint smile, "I heard Grandpa said that he had asked your father about you. Your father said that you are a street sweeper now. Is that true?" Stella was 1 year older than Grace, but she had been on the losing end since they were young. Grace had been a straight A student in school, but Stella couldn't even manage to enter a university. After graduating from high school, she went to take on part-time jobs. Later, she ended up marrying a metalsmith in the neighboring town. At that time, Grace was dating Sean, the son of a rich and powerful family. When Stella thought of the person that Grace had managed to hook up with and thought about her own partner again, she felt inferior and ashamed. Now that Grace had fallen so low, she would naturally want to step all over her in return. "That's right, I sweep the streets," Grace said in neither a shameful nor arrogant tone. "Sigh. What's even the point of you attending university? In the end, you still ended up sweeping the road. But, later, you won't have to anymore." Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Before Stella finished her words, Grace's first cousin, Hogan, gave her a look. Only then did Stella pause in the middle of her sentence. She then looked at Grace with an expression as if she was watching a show unfold. HMPH, what does it matter how good she was at studying? She's still going to end up marrying a fool. She was curious to see how Grace would look like when she got married to that fool. In the evening, when the family was having their dinner, Grace finally saw Susie. When she saw Grace, a layer of tears welled up in her eyes, and she hugged Grace for a long while. "Child, you must have suffered quite a bit. It's all because of my old and weak body. I couldn't help you at all back then," Susie said in the midst of choking up while trying to speak. Before Grace could answer, Stella said, "Grandma, Grace being in jail is what we call getting punished by law. She deserved it." Susie glared at Stella. Only then did she resentfully shut her mouth. Grace shook her head and looked at Susie. "It's all right, I didn't suffer much. Besides, haven't I already been released? I'll come back more often in the future and be filial to you and Grandfather." Hearing this, Susie felt even sadder. Mr. Kelly and the rest were afraid that Susie would expose them, so they quickly had them sit down to start eating dinner together. During the meal, the eldest uncle, second uncle, and third aunt kept urging Grace to have more wine. It's a rare occasion, so it's not a bad thing to drink a bit more. Grace, you need to make sure to come back more often and see your grandma and grandpa in the future, the third aunt said with a smile. Author's note: thank you for all your love on Grace and Jason, and I had read all your comments. I know I made some mistakes throughout it. I am so sorry about the names. And they are going back now. Just comment and ask. Grace maintained the smile and said, third aunt, I quit drinking already. You know that I had a car accident because I was drunk. How could I dare to drink again? Upon hearing Grace's words, the third aunt stopped and could only laugh dryly. Her uncle said, nevertheless, it is Thanksgiving. Just drink a few glasses. You are not driving now anyways. That's right. If you don't drink, you are not giving us elders any respect. Her second uncle followed suit. Enough. Grandma suddenly shouted, your consciences have been eaten by dogs. Are you really going to push Grace into the pit of fire? All of a sudden, no one at the table spoke, but Grace looked at her grandmother in surprise. Susie said to Grace, Grace, your uncle and others are up to no good. They want to marry you to the Miller family's full son. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. In exchange for $300,000. They, Mr. Kelly interrupted her before she could finish her sentence. So what if Grace marries into the Miller family? Are we mistreating her? The Miller family accepted her, even though she had been in jail. Do you think she can marry into a good family now? That's right. $300,000 from the Miller family is just enough to buy houses for first cousin and second cousin. Grace, you owe them this. If you hadn't been in prison in the first place, they would have already found a good partner. Stella added fuel to the fire. I won't marry anyone. Grace stood up and coldly looked at the relatives around her. Even if I were to owe anyone, it would not be you. She said to Susie, Grandma, I'll come to see you next time. After that, she intended to leave, but she was stopped by her uncles. Why do you want to leave? It's not up to you to decide who you marry. Her uncle said ruthlessly. Grace looked at her cousins, who were not far away. She remembered that they had played together when they were children. And they had had a good relationship with each other. You also want me to marry a fool? Elder cousin Hogan said, yes, it's fortunate enough that the Miller family is willing to marry you now. Otherwise, do you think you can find a good family to marry into? On the other hand, her second cousin Marcus shrank a little and said awkwardly, I am getting married. At least I need to have a house. I don't have any other choice. Grace laughed at herself. In fact, she shouldn't have expected anything from her cousins. She just made herself disappointed. Again, I won't get married. She took a deep breath and shouted at everyone. Slap. The next moment, Mr. Kelly slapped her in the face. How dare you not listen to us? There's no room for you to haggle over this matter. In the VIP ward of the hospital, there was a round table full of exquisite dishes, but only 2 people were eating them. Jason ate in a slow and orderly manner. Old Mr. Reed, who was sitting opposite him, was eating food with the help of a nurse. Author's note: thank you for all your love on Grayson. Jason and I had read all your comments. I know I made some mistakes throughout it. I am so sorry about the names. And they are going back now. Just comment and ask. In the ward, it was almost silent except for the sound of chewing. Neither the grandfather nor the grandson had said anything to each other. Although the nurse who picked up the food for the old master was curious, she didn't dare to ask. After all, these two were the most powerful people in Emerald City. Finally, after old Mr. Reed was almost full, he said, I heard that you haven't stayed in the house for the past few days. Yes, Jason replied indifferently. He was not surprised that old master knew about this. After all, old master had his informants everywhere, even in his house. Where are you staying? Outside, Jason replied. Why do you want to stay outside? Old Mr. Reed asked. It's too quiet in the house. He pretended to be casual as he picked up a shrimp and slowly peeled off the shell. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. Speaking of which, you should have a girlfriend at your age. I will ask my secretary to sort out information about the famous young ladies in the city. You can pick one. Old Mr. Reed's tone sounded as if it was as simple as picking out clothes. Jason's fingers, which were holding on to the shrimp, paused slightly. Then he replied, there's no need. Old Mr. Reed narrowed his eyes. What's wrong? If it's only to find a woman to give birth to a child, then I can choose my own candidate, he said. In the past, he felt that if he was destined to have a child who would inherit the Reed family in the future, then it didn't matter which woman gave birth to the child. But now, he felt that if he needed a child, he hoped that the child's mother could be Grace. It seemed not bad for the child to inherit his and her blood and genes. A candidate. Old Mr. Reed was shocked. Could it be that you? At this moment, Jason's mobile phone suddenly rang. He was slightly startled and took out a cheap mobile phone from his pocket. Looking at the caller ID on it, he immediately stood up and answered the call. However, when he heard the voice on the other end of the phone, his face suddenly changed. Jai, save me. Even though her voice was hoarse and shattered, he could still immediately tell that this was Grace. However, before he could ask, the call was hung up. Then, he dialed again, but the voice message informed him that he could not get through. Did something happen to Grace? Even he himself didn't know that at this moment, his face was deathly pale under the light. He then said to old Mr. Reed, Grandfather, I still have some matters to attend to. I have to leave now. After that, he rushed out of the ward. A hint of haze appears on old Mr. Reed's face. The expression on his grandson's face made him feel as if he had seen his son's appearance over that woman back then. For that woman, his son did not hesitate to betray his family and abandon his glory and wealth. But in the end, what had happened to him? If a man loves a woman too much, it's destined to end in tragedy. And now, what kind of woman would make Jason lose his composure? Grace had not expected these relatives to drug her. Although she did not drink wine at dinner, she drank some soft drinks. Now she was weak and had no strength at all. Grandma wanted to stop them, but she was stopped by the third aunt, while the uncles carried her to see the Miller family. She was locked up in a room by the Miller family, and there was a stranger in the room. He was the fool of the Miller family. Grace tried her best to remain clear-headed. She had to escape, no matter what. But now that she was in such a state, it was difficult for her to stand up. How could she escape? When she was carried over by her uncles, she secretly tried to call someone for help, but her phone was taken away. Whatever chance she had to escape was all gone. Why? Why did she call Jai first? Obviously, Jason was in Emerald City and could not help her at all. Furthermore, what could Jai do? Perhaps she should have called Lena since she could be a little more useful, or call the police directly. It was as if she had started to rely on Jai without realizing. Her vision had become blurred. The strange man smirked and rushed over to her. She could only try her best to dodge away. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. But she couldn't avoid that figure. Outside the room, the Miller and Kelly families were happily calculating the accounts for a while. Grace's uncle said, Mr. Miller, we have brought her for you. 300 grand, you can't go back on your word. Oh, good. As long as they finish up, I will give you $300,000, Jeremy said. In order to let his son get married and plant a seed for the Miller family, he was willing to go all out this time. Jeremy's wife said worriedly, "What if this young lady still plans to run afterward? You can take some pictures of her to use them to blackmail her. Then we'll lock her up for a while. When the child is born, how can she run away? She will stay here and be your daughter-in-law," her uncle said. He didn't have any pity for Grace. He only had money on his mind. That's right. If a woman gives birth to a child, she won't think about running away anymore. You are also a woman, so you should understand, her second uncle said hurriedly. Jeremy's wife thought about it and agreed. However, she was still a little worried. Will he be able to achieve anything in the room? If she resists, our son, how can she still have the strength to resist? Her second smiling face casual date is just a click away, Uncle said in a hurry. Jeremy also said, "Don't worry, I taught my son last night. No matter how stupid he is, he knows what to do." Jeremy's wife finally felt relieved. The four people were eating and drinking in the yard. Suddenly, the sound of a car came from outside. "Whose car is it now that it's late?" Jeremy mumbled as he stood up. He was half drunk as he walked to the entrance and opened the door. Just as he was about to say something, he was stunned on the spot. On the other side of the door, there were police cars surrounding the whole building. Jeremy suddenly sobered up. What's going on? Then, the policemen got out of the cars and surrounded the courtyard. Seeing that the policemen had surrounded them, Grace's uncles and Jeremy's wife were so scared that they didn't dare to utter a word. They didn't know what was going on. "Where is the woman you brought back here?" asked one of the officers, who looked like he was in charge. The four people looked at each other. Jeremy struggled to say, "What, woman? We don't know what you are talking about." The policeman did not bother to talk nonsense with him. He said, "Search." Suddenly, the police began to search all the rooms. Jeremy, his wife, and Grace's uncle suddenly became flustered. Seeing that the police were about to enter the room where business had been conducted, Jeremy shouted immediately, "Why are you barging into my place? Are the police allowed to break into my house?" He and his wife wanted to rush forward, but they were stopped by someone. At this time, some people found that the door of that room was locked. At the same time, another car arrived at the door of Jeremy's house. A tall figure got out of the vehicle and walked into the yard. A policeman swiftly went to the man's side and briefed him on the situation. "One of the doors is locked. It's possible that someone is inside." As he spoke, the policeman led the man to the locked door. Jeremy and his wife, as well as Grace's uncles, were looking desperately for any kind of excuse to not open the door. Jason stared at the door and said coldly, "Break it open." Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. Immediately, someone took an axe and directly chopped the door down. "You can't enter. You are trespassing in this house. I will sue you." However, no matter how loud Jeremy shouted, it was of no use. The moment the door opened, Jason rushed into the room. Just as the others were about to rush in, a roar suddenly came from inside. "No one can come in." Suddenly, the footsteps of the people who had been about to rush in stopped in an instant. Jason's eyes were blood red as he stared at the scene in front of him. The clothes on Grace's body had been torn off. She was cowering in a corner, being beaten and kicked by a man who was still smiling. Her delicate body was curled like a shrimp, and she was holding a broken piece of mirror in her hand, but at this point, she didn't have the strength to fight back. The only thing she could do was keep herself from fainting. She could only try to stay conscious under the constant barrage of pain. Fresh, dark red blood continuously dripped down from her palm to the light-colored sheets, making it look as if poppies were blooming. But the man beating her was still mumbling, "My dad said that if a woman is not obedient, I need to beat her. If I beat her, she will be obedient. So I want to beat you, beat you, beat you." The next moment, Jason directly rushed forward and pulled the man away from Grace. He then pushed him to the ground and stepped on him. His Grace had been beaten by the fool. A hint of murderous intent flashed in his pitch-black pupils. There was a sharp pain in the chest of Mila the fool as he was stepped on. He wanted to get up but he couldn't move. Even if he was stupid, he still had an instinctive sense of crisis. He only felt that the person who was stepping on him was terrifying, like a god of death who was going to take his life. Jason's eyes were scarlet and the killing intent in them was getting stronger and stronger. All of a sudden, the sound of breathing came into his ears, shaking him awake from that state. Grace. He directly kicked Mila the fool out of the room, then he looked at Grace curled up in the corner. At this moment, her body seemed to be soft, her cheeks abnormally red, and there was blood around the corners of her mouth. Her almond-shaped eyes, which had originally been warm, now seemed to have no focus at all. No one knew what she was looking at. Just like a weak little animal, she was still struggling desperately, wanting to protect herself. All of a sudden, he felt a twinge of pain in his heart. She had clearly been fine when she had left this morning, but now, she had been turned into this pitiful state. If he had come with her earlier in the day, she would not have encountered such a thing. When he wanted to get close to her, her body shook even more, and the hand she was using to hold the mirror shard tightened its grip. Suddenly, the blood in her hands surged even more. "Sis, it's me. Relax. You're safe now. No one will do anything to you anymore," Jason said anxiously. In the past, he had never been afraid of blood. Even if someone had dripped blood in front of him, he would not have been moved at all. However, at this moment, he was afraid of her blood. He was afraid that her injuries would worsen and that she would keep on bleeding. This kind of fear made his body tremble. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. Grace felt as if her body had lost all sensation and control. She could only feel the heat and slight pain. Only when she was in pain could she protect herself and keep herself from falling asleep. "I can't sleep here, I absolutely can't." Being isolated and helpless, she had once thought that when she was released from prison, she would be in charge of her own life. However, nothing had changed. Once something had happened, no one could help her. She could only bear this pain alone. "Sis, sis," a voice rang in her ears. "Who is it? Who is calling out to me?" She tried her best to open her eyes, trying to see who was calling her. "Sis, don't be afraid, I will take you away from this place," the person said. Her vision, which had no focus, started to clear up little by little. Her dark pupils then finally reflected the man's figure. Jay, she said his name with difficulty. Her voice was so hoarse that it sounded as if her throat had been scratched with sand. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. It's me. No one can hurt you once I'm here, he said, his handsome face serious. He was heartbroken when he made his oath. She looked at him in a daze. At this moment, it seemed that there was something different about Jay, but it was still Jay. As if all the strength she had been struggling to hold on to had been drained, her hand suddenly loosened, and the shard of mirror in her hand fell. She also fell to one side. He stretched out his arms to catch her, then directly took off his coat, wrapped it around her, and picked her up. Sis, go to sleep. I'll take you back, Jason said softly. Leaning on his chest, she could feel his familiar aura. It was as if she was no longer alone at this moment. There was someone else that she could rely on. Jay, you're finally here, she muttered. Her head tilted as she leaned into his embrace, gasping for breath. Yes, I'm here, he replied as he stared at the person in his arms. She didn't have to be afraid of anything. As he spoke, he carried her out of the room. The people outside saw Jason walk out holding a woman, wrapped in a man's suit. They could not see the woman's appearance at all as her face was almost buried in Jason's arms. Only her long hair could be seen outside the suit. One could still hear the woman's breathing, which was very heavy at that moment. Seeing the careful look on Jason's face as he carried the woman in his arms, everyone could tell that this woman was very important to him. Those who were aware of Jason's true identity secretly suppressed their thoughts when they saw the scene. After all, he was a big shot in Emerald City. How could he appear in such a place in the early morning just for a woman? Moreover, he had made such a big scene. Regardless of who she was, they were afraid that she would disrupt half of Emerald City. Find out who is involved in this matter, none of them should be left out, Jason said. Yes, one of his subordinates, who was walking beside him, answered. At this moment, Jeremy and his wife looked down at their son, who was shouting with pain, and then they looked at the policeman in the yard. They wanted to cry but they had no tears to shed. The couple glared angrily at Grace's uncles. Who the hell is? Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. She, her uncle and second uncle also looked pale. They looked at each other in dismay. Was the sneeze of theirs not a helpless woman who had just been released from prison for less than half a year? Otherwise, they would not have tried to take advantage of her. But now, obviously, there was a big shot backing their niece. Before that, when they thought of what they had said at the dinner and the fact that they had drugged their niece, they instantly broke out into a cold sweat. Why hadn't Grace admitted that she knew some big shots? If she had told them, they would not have done such a thing. Grace felt her body becoming more and more uncomfortable and feeling as if she wanted something out of instinct, but could not tell what it was. She could only rely on the people around her. That familiar aura made her feel at ease, and then, she wanted more. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Jason looked at the person who was moving around more and more in his arms, and his face became gloomy. Damn it, if he had come a little later, or if she hadn't called him, she would have been. Mr. Reed, we've already found something. The drug they fed Miss Cummins was a kind of pill that was secretly sold in a small local bar. I've already sent people to find out the ingredients of the drug, Terence said, reporting the latest news to Jason. Who gave her the drug? Jason asked coldly. It was her relatives. We haven't asked who exactly. They're all trying to blame it on each other, Terence said. Jason's eyes turned colder. Being betrayed by her relatives must have been a devastating blow. He felt that the person in his arms was moving more and more violently and seemed to be getting more anxious. He lowered his head and heard her vaguely cry, Jai. Jai, I'm here. Jason's originally cold gaze turned gentle in an instant. He lowered his head and comforted her with a gentle voice. I'm here, sis, hang on for a while, it'll be over soon. However, she acted as if she couldn't hear his words. She continued to move restlessly, her fingers scratching his body. Randomly, he raised his hand and tried to wipe back her sweat-soaked hair, but she suddenly opened her mouth and bit his finger. Mr. Reed. Seeing this, Terence immediately shouted. It's nothing, Jason said faintly as if he did not feel any pain. How long will it take for us to reach the hospital? 15 minutes or so, Terence said. In her current state, Miss Cummins definitely couldn't go to an ordinary small hospital. She had to go to one of the major hospitals in the city. When the car arrived at the hospital, Terence finally discovered the ingredients of the drug that Grace had been fed. The doctors had been in touch with them on the way, and they were all well-respected doctors. If anyone saw these doctors present, they would be shocked. It would have taken a big event for these doctors to gather together in such a short time. However, the doctors were looking at the prescription list of the drug and giving an urgent consultation to a woman who was wearing cheap clothes that had been torn to pieces. It's not a big deal. Give her a sedative and let her sweat until her body pushes the drug out. It should be enough. As long as this drug is not consumed in large doses for a long time, it will not. Ads by Pub Future. Have any long-term effects on the body, one of the famous medical doctors said. In addition, she can take some medicine over the following 3 days to accelerate her body's metabolism. Then, give her the sedative quickly, Jason said. A sedative was injected into Grace's body soon after, and she immediately quieted down as if she had fallen asleep. Seeing this situation, Jason finally let out a small sigh of relief. But we do not have clinical data on this type of drug, so I don't know whether we have injected enough sedatives. If she continues to have the same symptoms as before, I'm afraid that she will need to have another shot, the doctor said. After the doctor left the ward, Jason ordered Terence, go and guard the entrance. Then what about you, Mr. Reed? I will stay here and look after her, Jason said. Terence glanced at Grace, who was still unconscious. He then looked at Jason and said, why don't I look after her? If you suddenly leave like this, I'm afraid that old master will. I'm afraid that my grandpa will find someone to investigate on his own. There is no need to hide this. Anyway, sooner or later he will find out about Grace. Jason said, you can leave now, and I will accompany her. Hearing this, Terence didn't say anything else and left the ward. Grace and Jason were the only 2 people left in the large VIP ward. He walked over to the bed, lowered his head, and stared at the person lying there. Grace, he murmured in a low voice. He raised his hand and gently caressed her cheeks, which were burning hot. I'll help you get vengeance for what you've suffered today. Anyone who hurts you will pay for it 10 times. Or even 100 times. Is that all right? However, the sleeping person did not answer his question. Jason sat quietly by the bed and simply looked at her. It was as if this was the only way for him to feel at ease. He could not rest assured if there were others looking after her. After a while, her body, which had been motionless, suddenly moved again. An awake sound came out of her mouth. Jason frowned slightly and leaned over, trying to wipe away the beads of sweat from her forehead. But when he got close to her, her eyes suddenly opened, and then she wrapped her arms around his neck. Her cheeks were still red, and even her lips seemed to be dyed vermilion. It was like her dark almond eyes were covered with a layer of gauze, hazy yet beautiful. Jai. Her mumbling voice sounded from her mouth, and it was as if a 10,000-pound weight was smashing into his heart. His body froze all of a sudden as if all his senses had been enveloped by her voice. She raised her chin, and on her delicate face was a smile. Her soft lips came close to his and she kissed him deeply. He was in a daze as he took in her kiss. He could have easily dodged this kiss. He knew that she was only doing it because she was under the effects of the drug. But he couldn't bear to do such a thing. He couldn't make himself refuse this kiss. When she kissed him, he felt like he was falling under a spell. She then continued to deepen the kiss. When the tip of her tongue pried open his teeth, his body suddenly stiffened. However, after that, he opened his mouth and allowed her to do as she wished. She was probably the only person who he would allow to do. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. This to him. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling. He had always been a cold person. Even if a woman came close to him, she wouldn't be able to move him whatsoever. But she was different. Her kiss, her breath, and every touch from her fingers entranced him further and further. Finally, she said in a hoarse voice, Jai, it's so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. Only then did he suddenly come back to his senses. Just now, he had almost taken her directly. When he looked at her, his dark eyes were full of desire, but he was forcibly suppressing one. Even if he really did want her, it wasn't appropriate in a situation like this. After taking a deep breath, he pressed the nurse's call button. After a while, the doctor and nurse rushed over and gave Grace a sedative, and only then did she quieten down. Others might not have discovered anything, but Terence had. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Been by Jason's side for so many years. He could more or less sense that his own boss was acting strangely at the moment. It was as if he was suppressing something. Could it be? Terence looked at Grace on the bed and suddenly had an inkling as to what was going on. Sometimes, how much a man cared about a woman was not measured directly by how much he wanted her, but rather by how much he could restrain himself when he wanted her. Who would have thought that a man like Mr. Reed would forcefully hold back his own desire for the sake of a woman? Mr. Reed's care for her is probably carved into his bones at this point. That was all Terence was thinking when he left the room. On the evening of Thanksgiving, the Stevens and Atkinson families had their celebratory dinner together. After that, Lily went to the back garden of the Stevens family's house with Sean. Is there anything between you and Jason? Lily suddenly asked. Sean's body stiffened all of a sudden. He looked at Lily with a pale face. What are you talking about? What could there be between us? If not, then why did your expression look so bad after talking to Jason at our engagement party? Also, are the matters of Zoe being injured and the Stevens family failing to gain approval for a loan from the bank connected to one another? Lily asked him a series of questions and each of them made Sean's face turn paler. That's enough. These things don't have anything to do with each other. You need to stop asking, Sean said vaguely. Lily was not willing to comply. Sean, we are engaged, and it won't be long before we get married. Is there anything between us that we can't talk about? Sean hesitated. Of course, he wanted to confess. After all, the matter regarding Jason and Grace had been a weight on his mind. Especially these days, his parents had been worried that he was still in love with Grace, so they had been nagging him not to go and see her again. But he had long since stopped having feelings for her. He had to force himself to not say anything, but at the same time, he also worried about Lily getting the wrong idea. Lily, there are some things that I can't say. Sean took a deep breath. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. Lily stared at him and said, does Zoe's injury have something to do with Grace? Sean looked at his fiancée in surprise and could not speak. His expression convinced her that she was right. So it really does have something to do with her. Don't tell me that Grace got to know some people with a background of being in prison. Lily continued to guess. However, before Sean could answer, a voice suddenly rose. Well, isn't that just great? So it turns out that I got injured because of Grace. Zoe limped over. Originally, she had just wanted to call her brother and Lily to return to the main hall, and she had not been expecting to hear this. Speaking of getting injured, she was terribly depressed. Her feet were broken, and she had suffered a lot in the hospital. She had become a joke among her friends. And in the end, not only had she been unable to find out who had made her like this, but she had also been unable to attend her brother's engagement party. She had a belly full of anger. She was furious when she heard that Grace had sent someone to deal with her. She wanted to find Grace immediately and settle the score. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Brother, if you keep speaking up for Grace, I will not recognize you as my brother anymore. I don't know when my foot will recover, and it might not even heal completely in the future. Brother, Grace sent people to hurt me. I have to cripple her leg, otherwise, I might as well change my surname. Zoe said, ruthlessly. As she spoke, she took out her mobile phone, looking as if she wanted to call for assistance. As I said before, if you want to live peacefully, don't bother Grace. Sean exhorted. Why? Who does she think she is? Do you think that I'm afraid of her? Does she think it's enough to find some people she knows in prison to help her? That's right. After all, Zoe is the young lady of the Stevens family. If she does not retaliate when being bullied, then everyone would walk all over the Stevens family's head in the future, Lily said, speaking up for Zoe. What do you all know? It's Jason who's behind Grace. Sean blurted the sentence out in response. As soon as he said it, his face turned pale. This matter had actually been revealed by him. If Jason were to find out about it, like him, Lily's and Zoe's faces also looked pale. It was Jason. How is this possible? How could Jason have helped Grace? Back then, she caused Jennifer's death. Zoe said in disbelief. Sean said straightforwardly, believe it or not, it's true. Jason may have taken an interest in Grace. In short, Zoe's injury this time should also be the work of Jason. In addition, it's Jason who said that he didn't want Zoe to attend the engagement party. Zoe almost fainted. She had not been expecting the reason for her suffering such a serious injury to be that Jason had wanted to vent Grace's anger. For her, why was it Grace? In the past, Jennifer Atkinson had been a famous beauty. As for Grace, well, even if Zoe admitted that Grace was a good-looking woman, after 3 years of imprisonment, she was now a street sweeper. Without maintaining her looks at all in those years, how beautiful could she be? How could Jason, who had gotten used to beautiful women, be interested in Grace? So don't go and make trouble for Grace anymore, Sean warned his sister. Also, you'd better bury what I said to you today in your heart. Don't say it to anyone. Not even your parents. Jason said that he doesn't want others to know about it. Me telling you this today is already a big mistake. Zoe stopped talking. If it had been someone else, she could still have found a way to vent her anger. But if it was Jason, if she really provoked this person, the Stevens family might not be able to stay in Emerald City anymore. That person, some said that he was the king of Emerald City, some said that he was the god of war in the business world, and some said that he was simply crazy. Ads by Pub Future. It was said that there was once a woman who had bought out a hotel manager and acquired the details of the room number along with a set of spare keys for his room in the hotel. Because she wanted to get close to him. She wanted to have a romantic encounter. As a result, the woman was wrapped in bed sheets and thrown directly out onto the road outside of the entrance of the hotel. Later, the woman's family business started encountering trouble everywhere. The daughter of an originally rich family became a pauper in less than a year, and she could only sell herself in a nightclub to make a living. As for the hotel manager who had been bribed, it was said that no one saw him in Emerald City ever again. Some said that he had left the city, some said that he died, and some said that he was kidnapped by a human trafficker to do menial labor. In short, there were all kinds of rumors about what had happened. All in all, Jason was definitely a vicious person. If she offended him, she would drag her entire family down with her. It was also after the incident that many of the notable socialites in the city no longer dared to target Jason. Although Jason was physically attractive and rich, who wanted to take that risk? After all, the socialite who had become a nightclub lady had become the subject of jokes and served as a warning to these Emerald City socialites. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Did you hear me? Sean asked again. I know. It's no big deal. I just won't mess with Grace in the future, Zoe said reluctantly. Zoe took a few awkward steps and left the garden. Sean turned to Lily and said, let's go back to the hall. However, at that moment, Lily's brows were tightly knitted together, and her expression was extremely unsightly. What's wrong? You can't accept that Jason fell for Grace? Sean asked. After all, Grace had killed Jennifer Atkinson in the past. Do you think that Jason might reopen the case for Grace? Lily asked. Reopen the case? After all, with Jason's abilities, it would not be impossible for him to clear Grace's name. If Grace's case were really reopened, then my sister's death. Lily gritted her teeth and clenched her fist tightly as her body trembled. Don't think too much. Do you think it will be so easy to reverse the court's verdict? All the evidence back then pointed to her. Even if Jason wanted to reverse the verdict for her, I'm afraid it wouldn't be easy. Sean patted his fiance's shoulder and comforted her. What's more, Jason is just acting on the spur of the moment. With Grace's status, it'll be impossible for her to marry into the Reed family. I'm afraid that the old man of the Reed family will be the first to reject her. When Lily heard this, her eyebrows gradually relaxed. That's for the best. Otherwise, my sister would have died in vain. I knew I had let her off too easily when she was in prison. Sean pursed his thin lips. Let her off too easily. The scene of her 10 fingers bleeding and every bone in her fingers being broken flashed in his mind again. Back then, he had watched coldly from the side. One could even say that he had been an accomplice. If one day Grace wanted Jason to seek justice for her, then he and the Stevens family would. Thinking of this, Sean couldn't help but shiver. He looked at Lily next to him. Now, the Stevens family and the Atkinson family were in the same boat. Even if Jason was really interested in Grace, he wouldn't take action against both families for a woman, right? After all, Grace ending up in that state back then was all her own fault, right? Grace felt that she had been having a very long dream. In her dream, she felt like she had returned to prison. No matter how hard she tried to escape or plead for mercy, she could not escape the torture. Bone-chillingly cold, filthy water, punches and kicks rained down on her as the people said with mocking tones, "Look, she was a great lawyer, an intellectual. But now, she is just like us. Actually, she's not even better than me right now. She can't even fight back." Ads by Pub Future. How long was she supposed to endure all this suffering? Why? Why did she have to suffer such pain when she hadn't done anything wrong? Grace, do you know what was your biggest mistake? Offending the Lord of Emerald City. Grace, anyone who offends Jason will not have a good ending. Grace, Mr. Reed is merciful. That's why he didn't kill you. Otherwise, you would have died in prison. Merciful. She had been imprisoned for 3 years. She was wounded all over. She might not ever be able to have a child in her life. Could this be called being merciful? She felt so much pain that it was as if her body was about to explode. Who would save her from all this suffering? Don't. She struggled desperately, but she didn't know what she was struggling for. Was it because she wanted to break free from the pain in her body, or was it because she wanted to break away from such a tragic fate? Who could help her? Who could protect her? Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sis, it's okay. I'm here. I'm right here. No one can hurt you. A familiar voice sounded by her ear. Whose voice is this? Oh, right, it's Jai. Jai. Grace opened her eyes with some difficulty. What entered her view was a face that was as handsome as a deity's. This was Jai, but it seemed that there was something different about him. Sis, you're finally awake. Are you still feeling unwell? Jason's cold voice contained a hint of tenderness. Grace shook her head. After she had sat up with his help, she realized that there was something different about him. His thick bangs were now combed back, revealing his full forehead. He was wearing a tailor-made suit with a fire around his neck and had a watch on his wrist. Grace recognized the watch's brand. If this watch was authentic, then it would have to be worth at least a few $1 million. Is this Jai? She blinked her eyes and felt that everything was a bit surreal. Sis, what's wrong? He asked again because she looked to be in a trance. Are you really Jai? She asked in a low voice. Yes, I am, he replied. But, you're wearing. Only then did he realize that the outfit he was wearing was the same one that he had worn the day before for dinner with his grandfather. If I were the Jai she knows, I wouldn't be able to afford to wear things like this. However, after all that we went through last night, I don't wish to conceal my identity anymore. After all, I'll have to tell her who I really am sooner or later. If I do it now, it'll just be a bit sooner than originally planned. And once she knows my real identity, it'll be easier for me to take her under my wing. Even if I'm dressed differently, I'm still Jai, right? He asked, with a faint smile as he looked at her. At that moment, even if Grace had been an idiot, she would have been able to sense that something was wrong. She realized that there were some things that were not as she had originally imagined. Ads by Pub Future. You're not a homeless person. I'm not, he confessed. Then, why did you pretend to be a homeless person? A feeling of having been deceived rose within her and she glared at him. Her two hands clenched tightly to the bedding covering her and her fingers trembled slightly. The younger brother who I thought was innocent and had no one to depend on is not at all what I thought. It had been my own wishful thinking from start to end. It's just as Lena said. I knew nothing of him and yet I rashly brought him back home. And if he isn't really a homeless person, why was he staying with me in that cramped rental apartment? What do the days that we spent living together mean to him? I didn't pretend. You made an assumption and I didn't correct it, he argued. Grace paused slightly, and for a moment, she did not know how to refute him. Then why did you still live with me? You have a house, she exclaimed as she glared at him. Because it felt good living with you and, he said and raised. Smiling face. Casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. A hand to lightly smooth out her rather messy hair. Back then, you were the one who wanted me. That's why I stayed, okay. Grace bit her lip as her face paled and reddened repeatedly. That's right. I was the one who took the initiative from start to end. She pushed back the covers, wanting to get out of bed and leave the place, but as soon as her feet touched the floor, her body suddenly weakened and she fell forward. It was as if her legs had turned to mush, devoid of energy. He stretched out his arms and caught her. The drugs in your body haven't been completely discharged yet. You were suffering the whole night yesterday, so I'm afraid you don't have any energy for now. His reminder caused her to suddenly recall the incident that had happened the previous night. Last night, I was drugged by my uncles and then, they took me over to Miller's house. Grace's face paled instantly. After that, I was carried into Miller the fool's room. Then, they closed the room door and the fool lunged at me. Last night, her lips trembled and her entire body shivered. He lowered his head to study the woman in his embrace. At this moment, she's just like a small and weak animal. She looks so fragile, as if she couldn't withstand a single blow. She's so goddamn pitiful. People can't help but want to protect her at all costs. Too many people call me cruel and cold-blooded, and yet they would never expect that I want to protect her. It's okay. The thing you feared would happen didn't happen last night. When I rushed over, it was just in time, Jason said. It really is him who saved me. Grace raised her head and dazedly stared at the face that was inches away from her. But why did you go there to save me? She thought to herself, he didn't even come with me to town yesterday. Sister, did you forget? You called me and I rescued you, he replied with a faint smile. Luckily, I got there in time. After only a phone call, he was able to travel more than 100 kilometers just in time to save me. Grace felt an indescribable shock coursing through her heart. He spoke as he carried her to the bed and carefully tucked her under the covers. Your hand was cut by the mirror shard. It'll adds by pub future. Probably take a few days for it to heal. If there's a scar, I'll HND the best doctors to remove it for you. Only then did Grace notice that her right hand was bandaged. A layer of gauze. She had been so distracted by the many shocking revelations that she had not realized that there was a dull pain in her right hand. How much of yesterday do you remember, sister? Jason asked with a serious expression. Grace bit her lip lightly and did not try to hide the events that had happened the night before during the dinner, relaying everything to Jason without reservation. Jason's expression darkened. Her relatives are truly, they sold her to a fool. They sure have guts. If anyone dares to scheme against her, I will never let them get away. Just then, Jason's phone suddenly rang and he frowned as he glanced at the caller ID. He then turned to Grace and said, I lied to you when I hid my identity from you. You can have me apologize to you in any way you like, but now that you're hospitalized, you should take good care of yourself. I'll go and get the doctor. When Jason was done talking, he left the room and gave instructions to Terence, who had been keeping watch outside. Grace has already woken up. Call for the doctor to check on her condition. Only after he had finished giving orders did he answer the call. Mr. Reed's voice rang at the other end of the phone. Why did you take so long to pick up? I'm a little busy, Jason replied calmly. Is it related to the woman you saved last night? Mr. Reed asked frankly. Jason was not surprised that the old master had found out about last night's incident. After all, he had been pressed for time the night before and had informed the town's police beforehand. He had mobilized their forces, and members of the Miller family and Grace's relatives were still locked up in the small town's police station. It had been easy for the old master to investigate the matter due to the paper trail left behind. What is your current relationship with this woman? The tone of the old master's voice had gone cold. She's someone I'm protecting, Jason replied lazily, so you shouldn't touch her. Don't forget how your father died. The old master suddenly raised his voice. Do you want to follow in your father's footsteps? Jason's expression darkened instantly. Dad's past has always been a taboo to me. I didn't forget, Jason replied coldly. Grandpa, I'm not like father. I would never risk everything for a woman, so you don't have to worry too much. Once he was done talking, he ended the call. Mr. Reed stared at the phone in his hand for some time before passing it to the attendant nurse. I shouldn't worry. It would be great if it were true, and yet sometimes, his lack of self-awareness is the most terrifying thing. Just like my son all those years ago who promised me, Dad, I will never forgo the Reed family's responsibilities for a woman. And yet, ultimately, my son abandoned the Reed family for a woman. He didn't even want his life. Look into it and find out who that woman is. I want to know every single detail about that woman, Mr. Reed ordered calmly. Yes, said a man wearing a black suit and gold-rimmed glasses who was sitting in the corner of the hospital room, his fingers rapidly flying across the laptop keyboard. Grace lay in the hospital bed, her mind still in a mess. After all, plenty of things had happened within the span of a day, and she adds by pub future could not come to her senses. The doctor and nurse had just visited to run some basic tests on her, taking some of her blood and conducting some examinations. Only in the afternoon, after the blood test results had come out, could they determine her condition. Just then, someone gently knocked at the door to her room, and then pushed it open to enter. Grace studied the young man dressed in a suit and tie who looked fair and gentle. He's probably only a few years older than me. The man looked at Grace with a smile and said, Nice to meet you, Miss Cummins. I am Terence, Jason's secretary. This is your phone and bag. Can you please check the items in your bag and confirm that nothing is missing? As he spoke, he put her things in the storage space at Grace's headboard. Just as he was about to leave, Grace suddenly called after him. Who's Jason? Terence respectfully replied, You'll know when you have to, Miss Cummins. I'm just a secretary. Grace changed the topic of conversation and asked, Then do you know the situation at my family's old residence? Terence did not avoid her question. Your uncles and aunt, as well as their spouses and children, have been temporarily detained. Originally your grandfather was also detained by the police. But due to his advanced age, and in order to have someone by your grandmother's side to take care of her, he was released on bail. Grace was surprised. I didn't know that suddenly so many people would be detained. At home, the only person who actually stood up for me was Grandma. When Grace recalled the scene of the previous night, bitterness flashed through her heart. Furthermore, the Miller family is also currently being detained at the police station, Terence added. When Terence left the ward, Grace looked around the spacious room. A high-class VIP ward and a personal secretary. Moreover, there was more than one doctor who came to check on me just now. There were several of them and they were all chief physicians. Furthermore, there were signs of them taking great care and showing respect in their attitudes when they were treating 1. I'm sure they weren't respectful because of my identity. They only did so because I have the support of Jason. Who the hell is Jason? Grace felt as if her mind was even more muddled. She then picked up her bag that had been placed at the headboard and remembered that it had been left at her grandmother's house. She opened her bag and saw that all of her belongings were still inside. Her mobile phone had been discovered at the Miller residence and had been taken away from her. The phone had been turned off, so Grace restarted it. She saw that her notifications were made up of a series of missed calls and text messages. Some were from her grandmother, a few were from Lena, and there were a couple of strange calls as well. I can more or less guess the reason for Grandma calling me, but Lena. She looked at her notifications and realized that Lena had called her nearly 20 times. Grace quickly returned her call. Lena hurriedly answered it. Grace, is that you? Yes, my phone was turned off yesterday. I only turned it on today and just saw your missed calls, Grace explained. Lena let out a long sigh. My goodness, I called you last night but it didn't go through. You said that you were going to your smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. Grandmother's house and I was worried that something had happened to you. Other than your grandmother, the relatives from her side of the family are all the kind of people who hit others when they're down. Lena prattled on. She had called Grace from the previous night all the way through to the next morning but had not gotten through it all. The more she had thought about it, the more anxious she had felt, so she had decided that if she still could not reach her friend by noon, she would go straight to her grandmother's house in the afternoon since she knew the address. By the way, they didn't do anything bad last night, did they? Lena asked anxiously. They wanted to sell me off to a fool to be his wife and use the money to buy a house. Grace did not try to conceal the truth and relayed to Lena the incident that had happened the night before at her grandmother's house. Lena listened with gritted teeth. Why are there such shameless people? You weren't taken advantage of, were you? I'm fine. Jay saved me. Nothing happened to me, Grace replied. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Are you currently back at the rental apartment? I'll come and find you, Lena said. Don't. I'm not back yet. I'm with Jay now. I'll meet you again when I'm back, Grace hurriedly replied. Lena advised Grace to be careful and indignantly said, your family members should be punished if you let them off too easily. This time, they might sell you out again. Yeah, I know, Grace said. After hanging up, she hesitantly stared at the missed call from her grandmother. What should I tell Grandma? Should I pretend that the incident never happened, or should I say that my uncles and aunt are being punished as they deserve? She took a deep breath and dialed her grandmother's number. Not long after, the call was picked up and she could hear her grandmother's slightly trembling voice. Grace, is that you? Yes. Grace could not help but feel her nose tingling upon hearing her grandmother's voice. Grace, did something happen to you yesterday? I heard that you were later saved by an important person. Did Mila, the fool, take advantage of you? Did they? No, Grandma, I'm fine. Nothing happened last night, Grace explained. That's good, that's good. Her grandmother's tone showed her relief. If something had happened to you, how would I face your mother when I go to heaven? Grace could feel a tingling sensation in her nose again. Just then, Mr. Kelly's urging tone rang out at the other end of the phone. Why aren't you asking Grace to rush to the police station to withdraw the case so that our children can be released? Released? Why should they be released? They've committed such an evil act. They should be locked up for as long as they deserve. They're your own children. Do you have to do this for a person who doesn't share our family name? What are you talking about? She's my daughter's daughter. Her mother isn't here, so this old woman must support her. Are you doing this so no one will care for you when you are old? Or are you going to depend on your granddaughter who has been to prison to provide for you and attend your funeral? The two old people continued their argument as if they had forgotten that the call was still connected. A moment passed before. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. Her grandmother realized that the phone was still on and said, Grace, are you still there? I'm here, Grace replied. I'm relieved to know that you're fine. Your uncles, aunt, and cousins must have been blinded by money to commit such an immoral act. You don't have to withdraw the case. Lock them up for as long as they deserve. Grandmother exhorted in a stubborn manner and immediately hung up the phone. Grace clutched the phone and started sobbing uncontrollably. I had thought that Grandma was calling me to ask me to let go of the incident and not look into it. I thought she wanted me to ask the police station to release those people. I really never expected that Grandma would be calling to support me. It's just like when I was young and Dad left me at Grandma's and I was bullied by the other kids in town. When I was sniveling, Grandma would tug my hand and ask me to take her to look for the bullies. Grandma would say, Grace, don't cry. Grandma's here. Grandma will support Grace. We shouldn't bully others, but that doesn't mean we should be bullied by them. Grandma would reason with others for my sake. If she couldn't reason with them, she would even roll up her sleeves and act like a crazy woman. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. And yet, I found her so adorable when she acted that way. In everyone else's eyes, I was just a kid who had lost their mother and turned into a child from a previous marriage after Dad married my stepmother. But in Grandma's eyes, I was always her darling. Grandma always said, when Grace is all grown up, I'll be able to live in comfort. And yet, when I grew up, I went to jail just when I had become able to let Grandma live in comfort. At first, when Grandma heard the news of my incarceration, she was stricken with illness and struggled before recovering. A little last year, Grandma is well aware that if she stands by my side, she will be opposing Grandpa. She's bound to fall out with the family and might not even be able to stay in that house any longer, but she still chooses to stand with me. A constant stream of tears rolled down her face, dripping onto her hands, the bed covers. When Jason entered the room, he saw Grace hugging her phone and crying incessantly. He frowned hard and hurried to her bedside. He held her face in his hands and asked, Sister, what's wrong? Do you feel ill? Her eyes were misty with tears as she studied the man before her and shook her head. However, her response only made him more worried. Sister, what happened to make you cry like this? Tell me, no matter what it is, I can help you solve it. He dried her tears with his hands, and when his fingers touched her tears, he could feel his fingertips burning. Her tears are so warm to the touch, they're scorching hot. Her tears always make me feel a sense of helplessness. It's as if I would be willing to do anything to make her stop crying. Grace cried out loud and suddenly leaped into Jason's embrace, bawling noisily. She could not explain why she had done such a thing at this time. And yet, when she hugged him with her face pressed to his chest, it was as if she did not need to suppress herself and she could release all the hurt in her heart without fear. Jason lowered his head and studied the woman sobbing in his embrace. He hugged her gently, letting her cry her heart out. Grace didn't know how long she had been crying for, and when it ended, it was as if there were no more tears for her to shed. Jason used a tissue to gently wipe the tears from her face. Sister, can you tell me what really happened? It's Grandma, she said as she sniffled. Did she come to you to beg for leniency? He asked, his gaze darkening slightly. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Ads by Pub Future. No, Grandma just asked if I was fine and told me to ignore my relatives, saying that they should be locked up for as long as they deserve. Grace replied in a nasal tone. Jason was rather surprised. Your grandmother is a good woman. Grandma is very good to me, Grace murmured. It just never occurred to me that Grandma's treatment of me would be so good. She is willing to be at odds with the entire family in the name of upholding justice for me. What about you? Do you want to let your relatives go? Jason asked. Grace raised her gaze and stared fixedly at the man before her. Jason continued, if you want to let them go, then I'll inform the police station to do so. If you want to punish them, I can get a lawyer and make sure they rot in prison for the rest of their lives. He spoke casually, as if this was a very simple matter to him. Smiling face casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Grace was slightly stunned. I studied law. I know that once the nature of the crime changes, the charge will also be substantially altered. But no ordinary lawyer would be able to win a case like this. To really ensure that my relatives would stay in prison for the rest of their lives, only a few truly exceptional lawyers would be able to take this to court. Who are you? Grace asked. When the question slipped out, she could feel her heart thudding from nerves and she even subconsciously held her breath. Grace's long lashes trembled slightly, and when Jason noticed that her hands were anxiously clenched into tight fists, he could not help frowning. He reached out to lift her right hand, which was wrapped in bandages, and pried open her clenched fist. Sister, you don't have to be so nervous. Clenching your hand like this will only make it harder for the wound to heal, he said. Noticing that blood had already seeped through the bandage around her palm. It appeared that her wound had been torn open when she had clenched it into a fist just then. Jason pressed the button to call for the nurse. The nurse arrived shortly, and when she heard of the situation, she hurriedly removed the bandages from Grace's right hand. The wound on Grace's palm, which had been caused by the mirror shard during the previous night's incident, was bleeding incessantly. The nurse applied some medicine on the wound to stop the bleeding. Grace silently studied the nurse's actions from start to finish. Her expression did not change even when she saw the nasty wound on her palm. Only when the nurse was rebandaging Grace's right hand with gauze did she unwittingly frown at the pain, but she did not cry out loud. "Let me do it. Get out," Jason ordered the nurse. The nurse bowed out of the room respectfully. Jason took the gauze and bandaged Grace's right hand in a very practiced manner. His movements were so gentle and careful that she could barely feel any pain in her hand. When he was done bandaging, he put down the gauze. "Try to use your right hand as little as possible for the next few days. Don't clench your hand into a fist like you did just now. How much more blood do you want to lose?" She studied the dressing that he had done and noticed that the knot was tied very prettily. "You seem to be very practiced in bandaging wounds." Shadows flashed through his eyes rapidly. "I learned some 3 bandaging skills when I was young," he said, then thought to himself, back then, Dad was running around looking for Mom, and sometimes when he noticed someone with a similar smiling face, casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Ads by Pub Future. Silhouette. He would rush forward and stop them. He got beaten up a lot because of that. And I always helped Dad dress his wounds. I got pretty skilled at it after a long enough time. Ever since Dad died, I haven't bandaged someone like this. She is the only one. Next time, don't hold shards of mirror in your hand. You were lucky this time to not have damaged your nerves. If you had, your hand would be crippled, Jason said. Grace bit her lip. But if I hadn't done what I did last night, I wouldn't have been able to retain consciousness and would have fainted. Then, he would have been free to do what he wanted. Does it hurt? He asked. The scene I saw after barging in last night of her clutching the shard and bleeding incessantly has been deeply imprinted on my mind. I have never seen a woman using such willpower to hold on to her consciousness. Even if her mental faculties were in a confused and semi-conscious state, her willpower was still strong enough for her to keep herself awake. It's fine. She lowered her gaze gently. This amount of pain is nothing to me. Jay, do you know? Even if you lied to me, I'm smiling face, casual date is just a click away. Sign up and start meeting women in your area today. Still very grateful that you saved me yesterday. Back when I was in jail, no matter how much I begged or pleaded, no one was willing to let me go because I had offended someone I shouldn't have in Emerald City. Thus, all of the pain was what I deserved. She paused to take a deep breath and continued, but last night was different. When I was in pain, you came and it made me feel like I was not so lonely and helpless. She replied softly, but she did not notice that his expression had imperceptibly turned grave at her words. If there is anything that I regret in this life, it must be letting those people hurt her in jail all those years ago. Usually, I wouldn't care about the pain a woman went through in jail. Even if they died in there, I would just smile faintly at the news. And yet now, I don't want her to be hurt in the slightest. I'm sorry, he mumbled. She raised her gaze and looked at him confusedly. Why are you apologizing? If you hadn't come last night, I wouldn't be safe and sound now. She thought that he was apologizing for last night's incident. If he hadn't come last night, then my fate, it's obvious what would have happened. I would have been imprisoned in the Miller residence until I gave birth to a child for the Miller family. As the idea occurred to her, her face unwittingly paled. Then she spoke to him as if she had mustered all of her courage. The person I offended was Jason. Back then, the Stevens family was afraid that I would implicate the Stevens group, so Sean broke up with me. Now that you're helping me, what if it angers Jason? I think he might be one of those rich people and probably has some business dealings with the Reed family. After all, the Reed family is involved in providing the basic necessities of many residents of Emerald City. Some industries have even been monopolized by the Reed family. Therefore, Emerald City is sometimes jokingly referred to as the Reed family's city.